Good morning, everybody. It is time for the Stochastic NBA Strategy Show, and Josh is gone this morning. He's at the beach, and we've got Jordan supposedly with some sort of power outage. So I'm producing the show, I'm hosting, and got Adam here to do most of the analysis. So if you guys could do us favors, you come in, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and also we're sponsored by Vivid today. So shout out to Vivid Picks. If you guys haven't checked out Vivid yet, the main reason to do so is when you sign up using the link we have below, you're going to get up to a $300 bonus on your first deposit there, where typically it's only a $100 deposit bonus, but they have a special offer just for people that use our link. And also, first play over there, secure play up to $25. So if your first card happens to lose there, you're going to get it back in Vivid Bucks up to $25. So, Adam, I know that you are a little banged up this morning, but we've got a strategy show to break down, 8-game NBA slate. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm getting there. Long day yesterday watching football, but no, I'm good. I'm looking forward to getting back to basketball. Football sucked.
Yeah, so we've got 8-game slate tonight, and one thing I kind of wish about this slate, I don't know if you ever feel this way, but we have all the games kind of have a similar start time, other than the West Coast game. We have the Warriors-Rockets game, locks like 2 hours later than every other game. I think this slate would be even better if they just left that game off and did like bigger showdown contests for the late game.
Yeah, I agree. It's just annoying. Like, especially if you're waiting on news for that game, obviously it's really, really annoying and you don't have like options. But yeah, I usually kind of just wish they would leave that game off. If it's already a normal size slate. Like if we had 3 games, I wouldn't want them to, but 7 games is fine.
And let's get right into it, starting with the Denver Nuggets on the road against the Detroit Pistons. And there are a bunch of pretty significant road favorites tonight. One of them being the Denver Nuggets, 9-point favorites on the road against the Pistons. Pistons have been absolutely dog shit. They've had all these top draft picks, and so far hasn't amounted to a ton in terms of adding actual NBA producing talent to the team. Some, players there like Cade that have potential, but just haven't really shown it yet in the efficiency department. So we got the Denver Nuggets here, who I'm going to filter for here in the Sims tool on the side. And no real significant injuries other than the Jamal Murray one, but that's been pre-existing. We've had Jamal Murray out for, a little bit of a while now. So for the Denver Nuggets, Adam, where I think we should start is with Nikola Jokic. And if you look at right here, when I ran everything through the Sims, I got him in half of my lineups. Oh, not half. 27% of my lineups. Most roster player was Reggie Jackson in north of 50% of lineups. How high of a priority is Jokic going to be as a spend-up option for you tonight?
Yeah, like he's always a priority just because he's so good, and we've seen him really be a lot better without Jamal Murray this year, which wasn't the case last year. His production last year when Murray was out was pretty similar to his production with Murray in, but this year you've seen the usage rate jump up to the mid to upper 30s, in addition to maintaining a very, very high assist percentage. So Jokic looks even better than he would have last year. He's averaging over 2 fantasy points per minute. We have him projected for 68 DraftKings points. Good spot against Detroit. Price tag slowly going up. It's up to 12,800 now on DraftKings, but I'm still getting over the field. He's projected for about 12% ownership. If the slate started right now, I'd have about 22%. So pretty similar to you there. Huge priority as far as just clearly the top projected guy on the slate. It just becomes a matter of what value is available and, how much, who can you play to get to Jokic. But we have him projected 12 points ahead of Giannis. We have him projected 16 points ahead of Sabonis for the highest scorer on the slate. Like, he's just in a tier of his own.
Yeah, and I mean, you could see that right here too, where, listen, I've got him in 27.7% of the top lineups I selected here and projected for 12.8% ownership. So well overweights the field on Jokic, and not just him, other players too in the mid-range. I was getting overweight to Aaron Gordon, getting overweight to Michael Porter Jr., and then on the cheap end, Reggie Jackson standing out. So they're definitely players to be getting to here from Denver. And Reggie Jackson, as you can see right here, in right around half my lineups, we haven't projected for 27 fantasy points on the site. Jamal Murray remains out, but Reggie Jackson's never really become like super expensive in his absence. Is he somebody who's still like getting to at point guard, Adam?
Yeah, I'm getting over the field too. And I mean, I'm not excited about it because it's Reggie Jackson, but he's only 5K. He started 6 games without Jamal Murray now. 0.78 DraftKings points per minute, 28.1 minutes per game, 20.7% usage rate, 16.7% assist percentage. So it's not like he's stepping into any sort of normal point guard role. He's talked about it, and it's very obvious in the numbers that he prefers Jokic to run the offense. And I don't know how much of say Jackson has in that anyway, but it's what he prefers to. He said that he's becoming accustomed to playing off ball and kind of just watching Jokic do his thing. So not a great fantasy producer, but he's only 5K. The playing time should be there. Fields getting 24%. We have him with a 24% chance of being optimal. I have 36%. So yeah, I'm getting to Jackson. I'm also getting to 36% of Michael Porter Jr. at 6,800. Small forward, power forward, 25% ownership. I'm a little bit over the field there as well. Should be the second scoring option on this team in the 6 games that he's played without Murray. 23% usage rate, 13.7% rebounding percentage, 1.02 DraftKings points per minute in 33 minutes per game. So the playing time's been really good. The production's been there. I'm getting to all 3 of those guys quite a bit. I'm also getting some Aaron Gordon, a little bit under the field. He's coming in at 23%, 15% chance of being optimal. I'm closer to that optimal number, getting 18%, but overall getting quite a bit of the Nuggets.
Yeah, it looks like one of the better teams to target. And, typically if they're playing against the Pistons, you would just assume that there's a mass amount of blowout risk. And to an extent, there is. But, 9 points, if you look at the other games on the slate, there are a lot of teams that are favored around the same points margin. So I can't totally weigh the blowout risk too much because we have Denver, Detroit. Denver's favored by 9. Boston, Charlotte. Boston favored by 9. Milwaukee, Washington. Milwaukee favored by 9.5. Clippers, Spurs. Clippers favored by 8. Warriors, Rockets. Warriors are favored by 7 in that game. So I know there's going to be people who say, well, what about the blowout risk? And it's like, well, half the games on the slate have about comparable blowout risk. So kind of have to be something you ride with. I'm sure there'll be a game or two that blows out today, but kind of hard to figure out which ones it is going to be. Is there anything else you want to talk about from Denver?
No, it's those main 3 guys for me, and then also some Aaron Gordon. I'm not getting too much KCP, neither is the field, but Jokic, Porter, Gordon, Jackson all look good at their respective salaries.
All right, so let's move on to the other side of the game with the Detroit Pistons. And where we have to start is by looking at the injury report here for Detroit because we have Killian Hayes is questionable to play. Jalen Duren, he remains doubtful. He's been great when he's been on the court, but that's been, like every other game so far this season. But let's start with Killian Hayes, who, while he hasn't been efficient, is somebody who takes a good amount of shots when he's on the court for Detroit and has had some upside as well. If he doesn't end up playing, Adam, who do you see that benefiting the most?
Yeah, I mean, we got Jaden Ivey in the starting lineup in his place yesterday, so I would expect it to be Ivey. He played 28 minutes, could have played more, didn't close the first half. They went with Alec Burks. He did close the game, but it was a blowout, so who knows what that closing rotation would have looked like, whether it would be Ivey or Burks. But if Hayes is out, it would make Ivey look better. Right now, we have Hayes projected in kind of. We have him with like 16.5 DraftKings points. We have Ivey with 23. So if Hayes does end up not playing, it should look better for a $4,900 Ivey. It also would look a little bit better for a $5,200 shooting guard, small forward Alec Burks.
Yeah, and if we go ahead and look at Jaden Ivey, like you had just mentioned, he started in place of Hayes last game, ended up playing 28 minutes. The game was also an insane blowout. Houston, it was Toronto they played. Final score was 142-113. So a couple things. Everybody generally sucked on the Pistons, but who knows what that playing time could have looked like had the game been more competitive. And we know that we've seen Jaden Ivey be a pretty high upside fantasy player in the past. So in the event that Hayes doesn't play, I expect I'm going to be getting to Ivey as one of my most roster value plays on this slate. And then do you have any interest in Cade Cunningham as a contrarian option? And this would be independent of whether Killian Hayes is in or out, because even with him in our projections right now, I am getting to a little bit north of 20% of Cade Cunningham. And I don't care too much about like getting runbacks in NBA, but it is nice that I'm getting to some exposure to Cade when you consider how much exposure we had to the Nuggets on the other side of the game.
Yeah, I'm actually getting the Cade as well, 20%, like you said. And that's with Hayes, sort of projected in. So I don't think Hayes has a big impact on Cunningham here, but he's down to 7,700 on DraftKings, point guard, shooting guard, 10% ownership, 12% chance of being optimal. So a little bit underowned. And like you said, it's kind of an added bonus. I'm not getting the Cade just because he's playing against Denver and I'm getting a lot of Denver, but it is kind of an added bonus. If this game is competitive, does go down to the wire, you do get overtime or something like that. It is just kind of an added benefit to have Cunningham in those lineups.
Is there anybody you're liking from the front court with Duren set to miss another game?
I'm not really getting anything there. I have like 2% of Sar Thompson right now. That's the only other guy on Detroit that I currently have. Again, if Hayes is out, I'm going to start getting to Burks. I'm going to start getting to Ivey. But Kevin Knox's price tag came up to 4,700. Isaiah Stewart's at 5,800. I'm not getting to really anything but Cade right now.
All right, so let's move on to the next game. We have the Boston Celtics taking on the Charlotte Hornets, another game with a little bit of blowout risk here. We've got the Celtics favored by 9 points, same as the first game on the slate. Here's something to look out for. This is the tail end of a back-to-back for Boston. I think this is going to be a team that rests a decent amount this year. Porzingis rolled his ankle towards the tail end of yesterday's game. Jaylen Brown was questionable going into last night's game. I think that makes him somebody who's a potential rest candidate. Do you envision the Celtics resting anybody? And if they do, is there anybody you suspect could be held out tonight?
For now, I'm assuming that everybody plays, but obviously, who knows? And if guys do start getting ruled out, this team does start to look a lot better because it's a good matchup with Charlotte.
Yeah, my expectation is I do think they end up resting a player or two. If that doesn't end up being the case, you guys will see here on the screen, like I'm getting to some exposure to individual Celtics players, the most of which is Jaylen Brown at 10.7%. But other than that, it's, 5% Drew. I've got, like a couple lineups with Tatum, a couple lineups with Porzingis, but nothing really all that significant. There's always going to be upside in individual Celtics players, but when the whole team is healthy, it's really hard for me to prioritize anybody. So if anybody's out here just playing, 1, 2, 3 lineups today, I would say that there's no need to really target any Celtics players unless guys get ruled out.
Yeah, I agree. Right now, the guy I'm getting the most of is 8% Jaylen Brown at 7,900 on DraftKings. That's where the field is too. He's getting 8% ownership. We have him with a 13.5% chance of being optimal. He's somebody that I've thought was interesting at this price tag pretty much all season long, just because he's priced for his average production, but there is volatility in his offensive game because his usage rate is pretty similar to Tatum. His assist percentage is pretty similar to Tatum. He doesn't rebound at the same level, but you're just going to have games where Jaylen Brown ends up being the guy. And with that positional eligibility, with that price tag, it's pretty appealing. So I'm right around the field at 8% there, but not getting much of anything else. The field's getting to Drew Holiday around 8% too. I'm not, but I think that's perfectly reasonable. But if anybody does get ruled out, then this whole team certainly starts to look better.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about Charlotte. And guys, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Later on the day, Adam will be on the deep dive. I'll be on live before lock, and we should have more information on what's going to be happening with injuries then. And then particularly that Celtics situation, if players are resting, could really dramatically change the outlook of the team. Other side of the game with the Charlotte Hornets here, and Mikal Bridges is back for the team, and he's looked pretty good. From a basketball perspective, we've seen fantasy production pretty much right out of the gate. The minutes have been there. He's playing 30-plus minutes. So to me, he's the most interesting talking point from a DFS angle here, because what do you think his upside is for playing time? Because I do think there's kind of a range of outcomes here where we could just see him end up being a guy that plays 38-plus minutes like really quickly and be a guy like LaMelo that's instantly playing a bunch of minutes for this team. Do you think he moves into the starting lineup soon? And how much do you see him playing in terms of like what his upside for minutes is?
Yeah, we had a couple conflicting reports before that Knicks game. One reporter, I don't remember who, said that the Hornets had said that Bridges was going to stay around 30 minutes, even though he had played more than that in his first game back. Another one said that the Hornets had said that he might see his playing time ramped up even more. He played 31 and a half minutes in that game. He closed both halves. As long as he's coming off the bench, I think expecting around 32 minutes makes sense. If he were to replace like Brandon Miller or Hayward in the starting lineup, then I think you're probably looking at 35, 36 minutes. That would be a pretty good sign that that's happening. But right now, assuming he's still coming off the bench at 5,700, he's getting 19% ownership. We have him with a 13% chance of being optimal. It's still a good price tag. I'm not getting as much as the field. I only have about 6% right now, but just looks like a pretty good play at that salary, given the playing time that he's been getting. 65 minutes so far, a fantasy point per minute. So the production's been there, and forward eligibility is nice. So he does look like a good play. Mark Williams is the guy that I'm getting a ton of here, and it's scary because the matchup sucks, but it is a very good point per minute guy. 1.15 DraftKings points per minute. He's getting 20% ownership. I'm getting 28%. So that's the guy that I'm really getting to here, and I sort of wish I wasn't because it's Boston, but it's also a pretty favorable price tag at 6,100.
Yeah, same for me. If you guys look right here, I mean, 38% of my top lineups have Mark Williams in it on the first run that I've done. And yeah, you always have to worry about, is he going to get into foul trouble? Like, is anything weird going to happen? Because his playing time does fluctuate quite a bit. If you look at the last 4 games, he's played 30, 32, 23, and 23 and a half minutes. But when he's on the court, like you said, such a good points per minute fantasy producer. The price point on him is also reasonable. And then something else as well for this slate is we don't have to worry too much about the opportunity cost of late swap because the start times of the games are so condensed. So I'm not going to be like too concerned of getting to players early. So that is somebody I'm getting a good amount of in Mark Williams, some of Bridges, but then Nothing else really showing up in my lineups. I have 4% of LaMelo. He's not all that desirable of a pay up option going up against Boston. Any of the other players that are standing out to you from Charlotte?
No, it's pretty much Williams and then, the field getting the Bridges, even though I'm not much at the moment. I have 4% LaMelo, the field's at 4%. Obviously, anytime you get to LaMelo, that's fine, but 9,900 is a pretty healthy price tag, and it is it's a very tough matchup against Boston. So, it's difficult to prioritize paying for him. On FanDuel, he's a little bit less expensive at 9,700, but still only pulling about 5% ownership.
All right, so let's move on to talking about the Milwaukee Bucks on the road against the Washington Wizards. And once again, a game with a 9.5 point spread. So right around the same as the first couple games on this slate. Total in this game, though, massively high, 245.5 points. This is by far the game with the highest total on the slate. The next closest is Sacramento and New Orleans, and that is 7.5 points lower. So there's expected to be a lot of scoring in this game. But Adam, I'm still not really getting to a ton of the Milwaukee Bucks, and it's for a couple of reasons. First off, whenever Jokic is on a slate, he becomes just the spend up priority for me to the point where I don't get to a lot of the other spend up options. And that's kind of what happens with Giannis here. I get to him in 9% of lineups, but also Damian Lillard's looked really good as of late. And with Dame looking good, that's just usage that has to come away from other players. So I understand the total is really high for this game. So am I making a mistake by not getting to more Milwaukee exposure than what I have?
I hope not, because we're on the same page. I have 14% Giannis right now, Fields at 12%. It's just the problem we've run into all season long, and you nailed it. One, Jokic is just clearly the priority. I'd said it before, but we have Jokic projected 12 points higher than Giannis. So, yes, Giannis is $1,800 less expensive on DraftKings, but that's still a huge gap, and you're going to prefer getting to Jokic when you can, even though Giannis is cheaper and does have power forward eligibility, which is nice. The center opportunity cost on the slate isn't super high either. Great matchup. The Wizards can't defend. They play at one of the fastest paces in the league. So certainly happy to get to Giannis, but in the games he's played with Lillard this year, 1.5 DraftKings points per minute, 34% usage rate, 23.5% assist percentage. That assist percentage is down quite a bit from last year, which isn't surprising. And so that's really, really good production. It's just that 2 fantasy points per minute from Jokic is a hell of a lot better. And so it makes it tough to prioritize Giannis. He's generally been a better play on FanDuel. He is getting a little bit more ownership there today at 15% compared to 12 on DraftKings, but looks pretty similar today across both sites, where it's obviously a good play and a great matchup, but it's just tough to get to him and Jokic. And if you're only able to get to one, you're going to prefer Jokic.
Yep, that's just been the case for me on pretty much any Jokic slate. Any other pay up options kind of end up taking a back seat. And that's what's happened with Giannis for me. And then not getting to Dame either. His price has gotten to be more expensive, although kind of like we were saying with Giannis, I do think Dame looks a little bit better on FanDuel than on DK, but not really getting to a whole bunch of him either. We've got Middleton still on his pretty tight minutes restriction. We saw last year, Milwaukee opened the year being pretty conservative with Middleton. So outside of Giannis, who I have about the amount of the exposure the field has, there's nothing else I'm really getting to from Milwaukee.
No, me neither. I have like a random Bobby Portis lineup, and that is it. The field's not getting there either. Dame's pulling 6% ownership. Brook Lopez at 5,700 is pulling 10. I'm not getting to those guys, but they're certainly perfectly fine lineup filler. They do look a little bit better on FanDuel just because pricing is cheaper. Dame's only 9,200 there, getting 9% ownership. Lopez at 5,900 getting 15%. So they look a little better on FanDuel, but overall, even though it's a great matchup, it's just really tough to get to this team.
So let's talk about the other side of the game with the Washington Wizards, who, even though they're pretty big underdogs in this game, this is the team I'm getting more exposure to, and it's just due to the pricing. So Corey Kispert looks like a pretty solid salary saving option right now. Although with that said, he's somebody who, while he's in about a third of my lineups right now, if any more serviceable value plays open up, which is almost certainly going to happen over the course of the day, that's going to lower my exposure to Corey Kispert. Same for somebody like Danilo Gallinari, who's just a bench piece who I'm slightly underweight to the field to. He's projected for 17.5% ownership here. So I do think that there are some interesting value options from Washington, Kispert, Gallo, Koulibaly, but not anything like I'm crazy different from the field. Are there any value options that you're liking from the Wizards?
I'm getting the Kispert too. And like you said, that's going to go away as soon as we get more value opening up, assuming that we do. 0.74 DraftKings points per minute this season. It's not like he's a good fantasy producer, but he's only 3,800. He has shooting guard, small forward eligibility, 31% ownership, only a 13.5% chance of being optimal. But, I'm getting a little bit over the field. I have exposure right now to 9 different guys from the Wizards. The 5 of them are in double digits. Kispert leading the way at 38%. I have 26% Avdia right now, who's getting 16% ownership, 6K price tag. He's been productive this year. 1.06 DraftKings points per minute, taking on a bigger role since the Wizards don't really have any good NBA players. I'm getting to 18% Landry Shamet, who's getting 5% ownership. 3,200 point guard and shooting guard. We have him with a 12% chance of being optimal. He's another one like Kispert that is just going to go away as better value opens up. But early on in the day, I'm getting to him. It's helping me get to Jokic. Koulibaly showing up 16% of the time, which is pretty much in line with the field. At 4,600, I'm getting a 12% Jordan Poole for maybe the first time this year. He's 17% owned on DraftKings. That price tag just keeps coming down. He's down to 6,400. 0.93 DraftKings points per minute. He's not producing at the level that I thought he would this year. Not that I thought he was going to be good at basketball. I thought he would be good at getting fantasy points. He hasn't even really been that, but 0.93 is still perfectly fine as that price tag comes down. And then getting a little bit of Tyus Jones, Gallinari, Gafford, Kuzma, some of the actual players on the Wizards that I would prefer to be getting to. I'm not really getting to. It's the pricing on these guys. It's cheap. It's a good game environment. Should be high scoring. And you kind of just have to hold your nose because these guys suck.
The Poole season has been insane to me because, like you, I didn't think he was going to be good from a real life perspective. I'm not a Jordan Poole fan at all, but you look at the roster of the Wizards and you just assume like, oh, this guy is going to have like a 30+% usage rate every single game. He's going to be one of the league leaders in scoring. Somehow he has only had 2 games the entire season with over 20 real life points. And he's getting into foul trouble a lot recently as well. He has like 4 more fouls in something like 5 of the Wizards' last 6 games. So I don't know if I was going to say, I don't know if he's totally checked out, but that's kind of like standard for him is that he's never really like totally engaged in the games. He takes horrific shots, but this has been like as bad as I could have expected from a fantasy perspective. So I do have him here in 9.7% of my top lineups. That is less than what the field has, but same as you, Adam. I have 9 different players in my pool from the Wizards kind of spread out, but most of them are just guys that show up in like a few lineups. The ones that I'm getting to the most here, it is Avdia, Koulibaly, Gallinari, Kispert. So these guys with forward eligibility that are relatively cheap, that have some semblance of upside, but are players that are very flimsy value that could certainly go away should anything open up in terms of more injuries. Anything else you want to talk about from the Wizards?
I just kind of wanted to double back because I had said that I'm getting Shamet. We have him projected for 20 minutes right now. He played 6 last game. So again, like he's going to disappear one way or the other because better value is going to open up anyway. But I mean, that's also just an early in the day projection thing is why I'm getting him. It's not going to last.
All right, so let's move on to the New York Knicks against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And one thing I want to mention to you guys before we start talking about this game is this the final day for our Millie promo. If you guys aren't aware of what that is, we had last weekend somebody won $1 million on DraftKings using our NFL sims. We also had somebody win $100,000 in the $3.20 max for football. We had somebody win the mini max for $10K in football. And because of all the success that we've seen people have with the Sims, we wanted to run a promo for it. So it's promo code Millie if you guys are signing up for Sims package for the first time. And whichever sport you want to choose, whether it's basketball, football, or maybe even both, you get 20% off when you sign up using that link below and the promo code Millie. It's been really valuable to me as well. I've had a few big NBA GPP hits this year, and I definitely wouldn't have been able to do it without the new tools on the site. So for myself personally, I've won a tournament on DraftKings. I won a tournament on FanDuel. A couple days ago, I came in second on DraftKings for another 35K hit. And these tools have really been invaluable to me. So if you guys want to check them out, and you see a lot of it on the screen right here, sign up using that link below and promo code Millie, M-I-L-L-Y, all capital letters, and you will get 20% off the first time you sign up. And today is the last day for that offer. It's going away after today, and we might not have this offer again until the start of next season. So take advantage now if you guys have been considering signing up. But New York Knicks here, taking on the Minnesota
Timberwolves.
Sorry, what was that?
Did Alex win the Millie Maker yesterday?
Did he?
I mean, I know he was in first at some point, but somebody in chat just said Alex won it yesterday too. I don't know if that's what he was referring to.
Yeah, I didn't see if Alex won it. If he did, that's awesome.
Yeah, I hadn't seen. I was checked out by the time games ended.
Yeah. King 1 Tim 32, who's apparently challenging in a head-to-heads. He wants to know my username on DraftKings now too. It is G. Ehrenberg. So if you want to send me a bunch of invites as well, I'm probably not going to see any of them, but you could go ahead and do that anyway. So Adam, New York Knicks, I'm hardly getting any exposure to this team. RJ Barrett no longer dealing with the migraine issue. We've Quentin Grimes is questionable. Evan Fournier is questionable. That's not going to massively change anything for me. Really, it's the main factor here. The Minnesota Timberwolves have been really good this year. And finally, Rudy Gobert is looking healthy. I don't know what the hell happened with him last year in Minnesota, but this year he's healthy. He's one of the, if not the best defensive players in the NBA again. This is a difficult team to score fantasy points against. I'm hardly getting anything from the Knicks.
Yeah, much different game than the last one we talked about. Minnesota good defensively. I don't have a single player from the Knicks right now. That's fine with me. Obviously, if you're getting to some Randall or Barrett or Brunson, it's fine. But the highest owned guy on this team right now, Mitchell Robinson at 5% owned, 5% chance of being optimal. We have RJ Barrett with a 6.5% chance of being optimal. That's the highest optimal percentage from this team. So not really upset that I'm not getting to them.
Yeah, so it was Alex won 100K on FanDuel in the $55 tournament. And then also Eddie Lai won 50K also on DK yesterday. So Eddie is somebody who built a lot of the tools that are on the site. A lot of them Eddie is responsible for. So yeah, couple more hits using the Sims that people are putting in. The other thing too, Alex has won six figures like 10 billion times. We have the bios of everybody on the site. I don't know if you ever looked at them, Adam, but Alex, it says like it's like 212 six-figure DFS wins.
Yeah, so it makes me want to like update mine, and then I'm just like, oh yeah, it's like 9 now. Cool.
Yeah, so add another one to Alex's win column there. But anything you really have significant to talk about from the Knicks? Because I just don't have any real interest.
No, I don't have anything either. I'm looking at the lineup that won the Millie yesterday, and what the hell is this?
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. The lineup that won the Millie yesterday, off the top of my head, it was it was like unstacked Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
But then with like multiple players from other teams, like unrelated.
Yeah, Khalil Shakir came through. That's a weird lineup.
All the players were either like the absolute chalk at 30% owned, or just random guys that are like 0.5% on, like Shakir.
Yeah, like it almost looks like a bad cash lineup.
But hey, good enough to win somebody $1 million yesterday.
Yep.
So let's move on to the other side of the game where we have the Minnesota Timberwolves, and no injuries on the Minnesota side. The team has remained healthy this year. I've got some exposure to Mike Conley, some to McDaniels, but nothing really all that significant. Hardly getting to any Edwards, hardly getting any Gobert, hardly getting to any Towns. These guys are not like super expensive today. Edwards on the more expensive end, but not like the actual real, stud like Jokic type pay-ups. But these guys are expensive enough, and there is a lacking enough of value on the slate to where if you're trying to get to like Edwards, Gobert, Towns, it kind of does come at the opportunity cost of getting to somebody like Jokic. Edwards and Towns more because of the price, Gobert because of the position where they're both center eligible. So this is a game overall, not a massive amount of interest in, some exposure to McDaniels, some to Conley, but about even with the field.
Yeah, that's same thing I'm getting. I have 22% Conley right now, so a little bit over the field, 12% McDaniels, slightly over the field, and then just a lineup here or there with Gobert and Towns. Obviously, Edwards, Gobert, Towns are the guys that you would actually fantasy point per minute, but it's just tough to prioritize them on the slate where you have Jokic at their respective salaries. Conley's at 0.85 DraftKings points per minute this year. McDaniels only at 0.67, but that is likely to come up as we get a larger sample. He's only 4,200. So I'm getting those guys as value plays. It looks like that 5K range is just really useful. We were getting a lot of Reggie Jackson. We're getting a good amount of Mike Conley. So I think that's just a really useful price range to be getting to, Jokic and some of these other pay up options.
Anything else you want to talk about from Minnesota and the Knicks?
No, pretty unappealing game overall.
All right, so let's move on. Clippers, Spurs, and we saw the Clippers make a change to their starting lineup last game. Russell Westbrook went to the bench. We saw Terrence Mann move into the starting lineup. I think the Clippers are going to be good now. And it seems crazy that that's a hot take because people are so low on this Clippers team. Part of it's a bias. The public does not like James Harden at all. This is a very talented team on paper, like crazy talented. Harden, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Russell Westbrook now coming off the bench. I think it's a better role for him. Zubats is a solid center. Terrence Mann, Norman Powell. These are good role players. Daniel Tice, PJ Tucker's backups coming off the bench to play, like 15 or so minutes per game. This is a good, deep team, and I really thought the floor spacing looked better with Russell Westbrook moving to the bench, and I think that creates extra upside in guys like Harden, George, and Kawhi when the floor spacing is going to make more sense. So I'm getting exposure to Kawhi Leonard, ended up in a third of my lineups here, so overweight to the field on him. Paul George in a quarter of my lineups, overweight to him. James Harden, I didn't get to as much of on DraftKings. I do think he looks better on FanDuel, but this is probably the most that I've gotten to the Clippers at all this season.
Yeah, same here. I'm getting a ton of Kawhi. He's in like 40% of my lineups right now at 8,100. Power forward only is, kind of sucks. It would be nice if he had small forward, but he's 19% owned, 16.5% chance of being optimal. I'm getting the 40% of him. I'm getting the 36% Paul George. So I'm 2x the field on him. He does have shooting guard small forward at 8,600. So from a positional standpoint, he's really easy to get to. I'm getting a lot of Norman Powell right now. He's 29% owned at 4,100 shooting guard small forward. I have about 32% of him. Perfectly fine with me. 30 minutes off the bench last game. He did close over Terrence Mann. That's not all going to be the case, but knowing it's in the range of outcomes is nice, and he is only 4,100. So I'm getting a lot of those three guys. Also getting to my computer just froze, so I can't see. I know I had 18% of somebody. I just didn't see who it was. 18% Terrence Mann at 4K, small forward, power forward. He's 25% owned. So I'm a little bit under the field there. Field's getting the 17% on Harden, 11% on Zubats. I only have 4% and 2% respectively, but those guys look fine too. I'm just getting to more Kawhi and more George.
Yeah, so Terrence Mann, if you guys see here on the screen, I'm getting to a ton of Terrence Mann. We have him projected for 21 fantasy points, which is not like some kind of crazy high projection, but that was enough for him to make it into a ton of my lineups. If I was getting this right before lock, I would be inclined to do an ROI boost and downgrade my exposure to him. I do think a couple of things about Mann here. Number one, his minutes, even though he's starting, I think they're a little flimsy. He only played 21 minutes last game. So actually 2 games ago, he came off the bench and played 28 minutes. Then he starts and only plays 21 minutes. So it was the least that he had played since his first game of the season. But then also, I started to get concerned about what his usage is going to look like in that starting lineup alongside Harden, Kawhi, and Paul George. He only had 8% usage rate last game. So Terrence Mann, I think there is reason to get to him, but I think this is something that for me, I'm inclined to want to move down over the course of the day because his role, it's always hard to know what to do with some of the rates of these players when they move from a bench role to the starting lineup, because obviously there's more upside for minutes, but at the same time too, I just don't know how much usage we can expect from Terrence Mann considering the players that he's going with.
Yeah, completely agree. Like his role isn't to be out there doing anything offensively when he's playing with Harden, Kawhi, and George. And then the playing time's gonna be volatile too. Like you said, played 21 minutes in that game after moving to the starting lineup. He played about 12, 13 minutes in the first half. He closed the first half, didn't play at all in the fourth quarter. So like there is the potential for him to play more minutes, get 26, 27 minutes, but that's just not going to be a consistent occurrence because you're going to have games where Norman Powell closes. You're going to have games where Westbrook closes probably. So I think the playing time is volatile and the production is going to be difficult to come by. It's just a matter of him being inexpensive.
Yeah, and then also, as people are saying, Russell Westbrook hardly was playing last game, and yeah, I kind of think that has to be the case going forward. I don't think at this point in their career, James Harden or Russell Westbrook is the best fit on the court, and then also James Harden at this point in their careers is the better player. He also makes more sense alongside Kawhi and Paul George because his ability to shoot. So people asking in chat, Westbrook coming off the bench. Yeah, I expect Russell, barring injuries, I expect Russell Westbrook to come off the bench for the rest of the year. Do you assume the same?
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on. Anything else you want to bring up from the Clippers?
Nope.
All right, other side of the game, we get to talk about Wemby and the Spurs. And if we look at what I'm getting to from the Spurs here, it is not much. Not getting to Wemby. The only player I'm really getting significant exposure to, the only player I have more than 1% of is Trey Jones. So I am overweight to the field on him. He's only projected for 9% ownership. Wemby is somebody who I definitely think makes sense as a pay up option, but more so on FanDuel than DraftKings. And these are lineups that I've built out here for DraftKings. But on FanDuel, where you get the defensive stat bonuses, I mean, Wemby is the kind of game where he's going to break FanDuel scoring going forward. It's not out of the realm of possibility that in his prime, he's averaging something like 4 blocks and 2 steals per game. It's not getting to him much on DraftKings. I prefer him on FanDuel. Trey Jones, the one contrarian guy I'm getting to here. Anything else that stands out to you from the Spurs?
No, Jones is the guy I'm getting to as well, just getting to like 12% of him. And it goes back to that 5K price point. You're not excited at all about Trey Jones. He played 21 minutes last game. He's been coming off the bench, 0.87 DraftKings points per minute this season. It's just like I'm already getting Reggie Jackson. I'm already getting Mike Conley. And then I'm getting some Trey Jones in that price range as well. It's kind of hoping you run into a good game. If we get more value opening up, Trey Jones probably starts to go away. But I'm getting to him at 12%. I have 4% Collins, 2% Sohan. The field's not really getting to anybody other than Trey Jones either. 9% owned. The next highest owned guy on the team is Zach Collins at about 4%. On FanDuel, Zach Collins is pulling 21%. So he does look like he's probably going to be a better play there. He has power forward eligibility. He's 6,400. So I like him more on FanDuel because of the power forward eligibility. Nobody else there is really getting much ownership. Wemby at 5%, Keldon Johnson, Trey Jones, Sohan, all between 7 and 8%. But Collins looks like a strong play on FanDuel and kind of just like a tournament flyer on DraftKings.
And what also makes this team difficult is now they've got other pieces that are back from injury or guys who are in the rotation, like Mamou Kavalishvili. So we saw in just a ridiculously deep Spurs rotation last game where somebody in chat had asked, who was it? Fudunli Abbey asked Branham no longer in the rotation. I mean, he is, but so is everybody else. This is how many guys the Spurs played last game. Wemby, Collins, Sohan, Keldon Johnson, Chetty, Champagny, Mamou Kavalishvili, McDermott, Branham, Trey Jones, Barlow, and Bass. They were in a 12-man rotation last game.
Yeah, and all of those guys played in the first half.
Which makes
it's not like one or two of those guys just played a couple minutes at the end of the game. Dominic Barlow did not play in the second half, so they ran an 11-man. They ran a 10-man rotation in the second half, but a 12-man rotation in the first half. Bassey did not play in the second half, and Barlow did not play in the second half. Mamou Kavalishvili got the Bassey minutes in the second half, I assume. But really, really, really ugly rotation for the Spurs.
Yeah, and that's why I hardly get to any of these guys. So some of Trey Jones is a contrarian piece, but that's about it for me. And listen, if you have a lineup or two with Wemby on DraftKings, totally cool with it. Prefer him on FanDuel because of the defensive stat bonus. But this is a team that I'm not going to love getting to overall because of how deep that rotation was last game. You never know what levers Pop is going to pull. It could be any, but like it could be, he could decide like, hey, Doug McDermott plays 25 minutes today, or he'll decide like, hey, we're Trey Jones closed instead of Sohan. There's just so many different things that he could do, and it's not going to be consistent. It's hard for me to really want to get to anything from here. Anything else that you would like to add from the Spurs-Clippers game?
7 different guys played at least 20 minutes last game.
It's a nightmare for DFS. But luckily, I don't think there's so much upside here that we have to be too concerned about not playing some of these role players. Kings and the Pelicans. This is the game with the second highest total on the slate, 238 points on the Kings side of the game. I am getting overweight to some pieces here. I am getting to some lineups with Chris Duarte. Once again, really, really flimsy piece of value, but he's projected for 15 fantasy points for us, and value just kind of sucks on the slate. So he's one of those guys. Good positionality, shooting guard and small forward. He allows you a little bit more flexibility to spend up for Nikola Jokic. And then I like Domantas Sabonis as a contrarian spend up option. So those are the couple of guys that I have double-digit exposure to here, Adam. Duarte, Sabonis for way different reasons. Sabonis because he's actually good. Duarte just because he's cheap on a slate without many cheap guys to get to. What are you noticing from the Kings?
Yeah, I'm getting to Duarte too, and that's just potentially a value piece that goes away. Now, if Herter were to miss this game, Duarte started yesterday. He played 32 and a half minutes. He's 3,100 shooting guard, small forward. Like, he ends up being a great value piece if that's the case. If Herter is back, then he's not a very good value piece and probably goes away. In the last game that Herter played, Duarte played 15 minutes off the bench. Right now, we kind of have a weird projection. Like, we have Duarte at 20 minutes. We have Herter at 25. So it's kind of like we're splitting the difference there. And that's one reason why Duarte is showing up right now. But that news is really going to matter because if he's starting, he looks great. If he's not starting, he looks like somebody that will probably disappear by lock. I'm getting the 26% Sabonis, which I think might be the first time this year that I'm getting to him. He's only getting 9% ownership, 11% chance of being optimal, 10K at center, good spot, and just looks good. When you can't get to Jokic, who's 2,800 more, Sabonis isn't a bad consolation prize. He's 1,000 less than Giannis too, which is nice. So I'm getting him the most. I'm getting Duarte right now. Getting 14% De'Aaron Fox at 9,300. That salary has come up, but it's pretty much where it should be. He was just really underpriced when he was 8K or 8,200, whatever it was. So I'm about 2x the field on him. Keegan Murray showing up 8% of the time, which is the same as the field pretty much. So getting to some Kings here. Certainly need the status of Herter.
Yeah, Kevin Herter dealing with a finger injury. So it was a couple of games ago. He jammed a finger. He left briefly, was able to return. So if you do look at the minutes, the last time he played, it was only 25. But Part of it is because he left the game midway through before returning. So Kevin Huerter's been a little bit misleading the last time he was in, but he's questionable if he's out. Chris Duarte likely to start in his place. Like Adam said, Duarte played 32 minutes last game. Nobody else that I really think a Kevin Huerter absence would impact all that much. Any other potential value plays you'd be looking at if Huerter doesn't play?
Probably not too much. Looking back at the game yesterday, Duarte pretty much took those minutes. Keon Ellis only played 9 minutes. Vezenkov only played 13, including garbage time. Malik Monk played 18 minutes. He certainly could play more if the game's competitive. Maybe we would see him close over Duarte. That's certainly possible. But I don't think it moves the needle too much outside of $3,100 Duarte.
All right, so let's move on to talking about the other side of the game with the New Orleans Pelicans, where I'm getting to absolutely. Oh, let me see. Did I? New Orleans. There we go. I had the wrong abbreviation for us. I'm not getting anything here. Not quite the case because I put an NOR as opposed to NOP there. So getting to a little bit of Zion, but nothing really standing out here. We also have a couple of players potentially coming back for the Pelicans. We've got Jose Alvarado. He's questionable. And let's see, how long has Alvarado been out? I'm not even sure if Alvarado's played yet.
He's been out the whole season.
Yeah. So with that in mind, if Alvarado comes back into the mix, that's going to take away from guys like Jordan Hawkins, who's been a solid rookie and has been relevant on a few DFS slates. Matt Ryan's list is questionable. That doesn't really matter all that much. But Alvarado coming back would pretty much take guys like Dyson Daniels, Jordan Hawkins completely out of consideration. Herb Jones would also be impacted. So the only player I'm getting to any kind of real exposure here is Zion, who has been a little bit underwhelming from a fantasy perspective this year, but he is still somebody that I think has a ton of upside going forward this season.
Yeah, and he's still been at 1.2 DraftKings points per minute this year. Certainly could be better, but he's the one I'm getting to the most at 10%. The field is getting to about 9%. So pretty much in line with the field there. He's the guy that the field's getting to the most. I'm getting to the most. It's a good matchup for this team, but you just run into pretty efficient pricing with it being prices having already adjusted for CJ McCollum being out and then being pretty much a healthy team here. Brandon Ingram also lost small forward eligibility on DraftKings, which sucks. So now he's just an $8,900 shooting guard there, which makes him more difficult to get to at 8,900. He's getting about 5% ownership. He's getting 18% on FanDuel because he's $500 less expensive than DraftKings, and he is a small forward. So he looks better there. Zion is free on FanDuel. He's $8,000 power forward, 36% owned, 24% chance of being optimal. Those guys look a lot better on FanDuel than they do on DraftKings.
Yeah, hard to get to them on DK. And then also, like you'd said, I mean, there's nobody with MP. Like of the core guys for the Pelicans, Valanciunas, center only. Ingram, shooting guard only. Zion, power forward only. It really limits the amount of flexibility you have, where at least when you're playing on FanDuel, like you need to play two power forwards and Zion's underpriced. You need to play two small forwards. And then also Ingram is, he's been the best fantasy producer on the Pelicans for a lot of this season. So they do look better on FanDuel and DraftKings, and I'm hardly getting to any of these guys on DK. Any of the role players stand out to you or anything that would change if Alvarado's out again?
I don't really think so. I mean, Dyson Daniels, point guard, small forward, is showing up like 2% of the time for me and the field. Just kind of a guy, but there's nothing else that really looks appealing. I will say I wish I was getting to a 3% owned Joval just because he can play more minutes with no Larry Nance. You got 30 minutes last game. He's a 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy. So like he's interesting at very little ownership given, the type of games he can give you. But the price tag has come up a little bit to 6,800, and I'm not getting to him, even though I kind of wish I was.
All right. If you guys haven't done yet, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I see Mike Lawrence, Yocastic in the YouTube chat. Mike, one of our producers, he's telling everybody hit the like button, get it over 100 likes. And yeah, appreciate that, Mike. And if you guys could do that, it only takes a half second of your time and it helps support our free content. So do that one thing for us. We really do appreciate it. Let's move on to the next game, Adam. Only two left to talk about. This one is the Miami Heat against the Chicago Bulls. And this game has the lowest total on the slate by an overwhelming margin, 208.5. The Wizards Bucks game has a total about 40 points higher than this game, which really makes it hard to want to roster many guys from this game just because of the lack of scoring and the low pace of play. And it's not like the guys are so inexpensive where it's compromising for the low total. So I think this is a very unappealing game. My most roster player is 4% of Kevin Love.
Yeah, we're on the same page. I have 6% Vooch, 4% Bam, 2% Kobe White, and that is the extent of players that I have from this game. Obviously, Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, Vooch, DeRozan, Levine, like these guys are all good fantasy producers. They're not bad plays in the sense that like they're getting 4 or 5% ownership. If you need to offset ownership in your lineup and find a high upside contrarian play, they're fine. But it's just so difficult to get to this game considering it should be played at a slow pace. There's not likely to be a lot of scoring. So if you're going there, you're basically just banking on talent and hoping it wins out despite the things working against them. So far this season, the Bulls have played at the third slowest pace. Miami is bottom 10 in pace as well. Miami is 9th in defensive rating. Bulls are 13th. It just sets up as a really ugly spot.
Yeah, it is one where the only player more than 4% of in this game is Vooch. And I mean, that might even be something that goes away as we get closer to lock. So I don't really have anything else to add to this game unless you do.
No. And like Vooch is one where like he's 6% owned. I have 6%. That's fine. If that turned into like Joval, I would be perfectly fine with that. I think they're kind of similar plays. They're very, very different games and matchups, but similar types of plays.
All right, so let's move on to the final game on the slate. And one thing that I am happy about is that we don't have anybody listed as questionable for this game because this game starts 2 hours later than any other game on the slate. It is going to be a massive, massive pain in the ass if somebody gets added as questionable in a couple of hours. For now, not a headache we have to deal with. The game looks like it should be good to go with everybody as is. And it's one that makes sense to get to. Another fairly decent total at 220. We got good pricing on some guys here on the Houston side. So Houston, they are going to be playing on the tail end of a back-to-back. One of the reasons why they're such big underdogs in this game, even though Ime Udoka has really, really turned around this team this year. He's pretty clearly established himself as one of the best coaches in the NBA because there's no scenario last year where you could have told me the Rockets would have one of the best defensive ratings through the first month of this season. I would have believed it, but that's what Ime Udoka has got this team doing. And there's 3 players here that I've got 20+% of from the Houston side, Adam. That is Şengün, Jalen Green, and Jae'Sean Tate, who's only projected for 5% ownership. He looks like a pretty decent contrarian option to get to.
Yeah, I think our projection on him is way high right now. I'm getting like 50% Tate, but that's because we have him projected for 25 and a half minutes. He played 16 minutes yesterday. He played 9 minutes the game before that. So I think that comes down. And that's why, like, if you look at the boom bust tool, we have a 20% chance of being optimal at 5% owned. That's just the thing where, like, if that all holds, then yeah, I'll get a lot of Tate, but I think that is going to go away, or at least come down quite a bit. I'm getting the Şengün 32%. I'm getting a lot of Jeff Green for some reason. I think that's going to go away too. Happy to get the Şengün, not happy to be getting a lot of Tate or Green. I'm getting a good amount of Jabari Smith also. He's projected for 8% ownership. So I'm really getting a lot of this Houston team, 14% Van Vliet, 12% Jalen Green. And I think some of it goes away, some of it probably holds.
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on Tate. I don't really mind our projection because Tari Eason's out tonight. And
That's fair.
Eason's been back in the rotation. So Eason's not playing a mass amount of minutes. And I'm not saying that, like, I guarantee Tate is going to play bigger minutes. But when you try to figure out where the absence of the Tari Eason minutes are going to go to, I don't think it's crazy to think that, like, we get to, like, that 25-ish minutes from Tate.
Yeah, I mean, Eason definitely matters for sure. He played 17 minutes yesterday to Tate's 16. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if, like, does Tate pick up pretty much all the minutes? Does Green get some of them? Does Aaron Holiday play more? There's different ways they can go, but that is a good point.
Yeah, and if we go ahead and look at Tate, at least earlier in the year, when there was none of Tari Eason before Eason came back, we were seeing games where Tate would play like 22, 24 minutes, stuff like that. So it's definitely, there's a number of different ways that we could see the Rockets go. But I do think, particularly because the Warriors play a lot of smaller lineups, it probably is a matchup where it makes sense for Houston to go a little bit more with Jae'Sean Tate there. So I especially because he's only projected for 5% ownership, I think that's more reason to look at Jae'Sean Tate as somebody who's a decent looking contrarian option here, but definitely flimsy minutes, but at least a low ownership. I do like the potential for upside on a slate that doesn't have very much value. And
so I think the thing that's going to change though is, like, either that projection holds and his ownership comes up, or the projection comes down and his ownership stays down. Like, you're not going to get in 2023 NBA DFS a spot where, like, Jae'Sean Tate is being projected as, like, this great play and, like, nobody's playing him.
Yeah. And part of the reason I do get to him right now is because that ownership is so low and the value just sucks today. So we'll see what that ends up looking later on.
Right. Like, I have 52% Jae'Sean Tate right now. Let's say that ownership projection just pretty much gets in line with the optimal percentage at 20%. It's pretty likely that now I'm getting like 25% instead of 50%.
And then Jalen Green, Şengün, I both think they are guys who not like super expensive, but like the midish to upper mid range tier guys that I like in that kind of salary price range. Not really getting to any of Fred VanVleet. He's projected for 14% ownership. I'm underweight to him. Anything else you'd like to bring up from Houston?
No, just getting to a lot of them. And again, I think some of that changes, some of it doesn't.
All right, let's talk about the Golden State Warriors. And I'm not getting to any of the players who I would care to get to from the Warriors. So, not getting, which I mean is really just Steph Curry. But so Steph Curry not showing up in lineups for me. Chris Paul not showing up in lineups. Klay Thompson not showing up in lineups. I've got like a couple of Andrew Wiggins lineups here. I'm getting to Podzemski, who I'm not positive I pronounced his name correctly. I don't think I did. And Kevon Looney a little bit in the front court here. If you look at the Warriors, Draymond Green remains suspended. We also have Gary Payton. He's out for a few games dealing with an injury. I think it's a foot or an ankle injury that Gary Payton has. So in the front court, getting to some guys with the Warriors likely being forced to play bigger lineups without Draymond Green and Gary Payton, but nothing I'm like overly enthusiastic about playing.
Yeah, same page. I'm only getting to Kevon Looney and Podziemski right now. I have 12% Looney, who's projected for 20% ownership, so a little bit under the field there. But 5,500. He started last game. He played about 29 and a half minutes in regulation, 34 and a half minutes, including overtime. Podziemski still played 25 minutes off the bench with Steph back, which was, I think pretty surprising, but the playing time was there. He's 4,400. He's getting 16% ownership. I have 10% right now. So not anything I'm really confident in, but has been a good enough fantasy producer. The minutes seem like they're at least decent right now. So at 4,400, don't mind taking some shots on him, but I'm not getting to CP3. I'm not getting to Thompson. I'm not getting the Wiggins. I'm not getting the Kuminga. The only guys I have right now are Looney and Podziemski.
Anything else you want to talk about from this game?
Nope.
All right, so we are about to wrap the show up, but first we got a super chat here from Ace of Spade. He wanted to know about DK tiers, so I really quickly ran some DK tiers lineups, and I will read you the results here, Ace of Spade. So tier 1, I liked Giannis the most, and it's kind of a weird group of players in tier 1 because Giannis, and then it's Sabonis, Tatum, and Fox. Giannis is just such a better fantasy booster than those guys. So Giannis in tier 1 for me. Tier 2, that is LaMelo Ball. Tier 3, Paul George. Tier 4, Kawhi Leonard. Tier 5, I got to Şengün the most. And then tier 6 is super, super close. We got a lot of guys that are projected similarly here, but I do like Jrue Holiday the most of those players. And that is somebody who, if he rests, obviously we wouldn't like him at all. But if we see like a Jaylen Brown and or Kristaps Porzingis rest, then Jrue Holiday would project better. So that's a little rundown of DK tiers. Thank you for the super chat, Ace of Spade. And Adam, any final thoughts on the slate or anything else?
I'll have my studs article out in a little bit. I'll have my lineup generator video out this afternoon, and I'll be back for the deeper dive later.
Yep. And if you guys haven't done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And don't forget, today is the last day of the Millie promo. So if you guys have not signed up for our Sims package, you sign up using that promo code Millie in the link below. You're going to get 20% off, all capital letters on that promo code MILLY. 20% off when you sign up for the first time. It's good for the NBA Sims. It's good for our football package. So if you guys want to check it out and change the way you're playing DFS, I highly recommend it. It's helped me out a whole bunch. And you can get in for a discount today, the absolute last day, 20% off using that promo code Millie. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Check out all our content the rest of the day. You know that stuff could change with the NBA injury report. Adam's going to be on the deeper dive. I'm going to be on Live Before Lock tonight. Hope to see you guys then. Peace out.